issues, like someone had wanted to come to this session because they want to know more about open badges, and they want anything from me to address during my presentation. Has anyone come along with a burning question about badges? Joyce?
Well, I'm really interested to see how it meshes with the assessment structures that we've already got.
Okay.
Like
augmenting
at
stuff.
Institution level.
More holistic kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Adam?
I'm interested about the roadmap on the backpack.
Right, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, what's going to happen with
Excellent. That's my section 4. So thank you very much for that paid question. Steve?
I'm interested in people's perceptions about, what's the value of them in terms of different contexts of learning.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm actually going to quickly riff off what something that Grania said. She said that the jury's still out on MOOCs, and it is, absolutely. So, as you'll know, there's different types of MOOCs and that type of thing. And people say, the jury's still out on badges as well. And I had one person, I was at Keynote at the OER conference a couple of weeks ago, and one person came back and said something about they weren't convinced that badges could replace degrees. And I thought they kind of fundamentally missed the point. The point isn't that we need to replace things that we've already got. We need to provide new ways of doing things. That's the whole point of having new forms of accreditation, new forms of credentialing. Ed, if I press go now, is this going to work? 1 second. Show my screen. There we are. The anticipation. There we are. You have no idea how long it took me to put animated GIFs in this presentation. I was sitting at the back during Grania's presentation, still finishing off. I should probably not admit to that, but I was. Now, I work for Mozilla, who you may or may not know. Is someone working?
Showing screen, yeah.
You on that one?
Yep. You can minimize.
Happy days. Right, so. Sorry, Ed. There we go. Cool. Right, so I work for Mozilla. Now, you may not know what Mozilla does, but it's a fairly kind of loosely joined organization across the whole world. And there is never an email stream, comment stream, whatever, that doesn't feature an animated GIF. So I've been saving these ever since I started last July. But then I didn't have enough, so I had to ask my fellow colleagues, can you provide me with some? And literally within 10 minutes, it was like tick, 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 all the way down. It was awesome. Anyway, so my name is Dr. Doug Belshaw. If you need an emergency tracheotomy, I'm not your man. Right? If you have an existential crisis around digital literacy, I might be able to help with that. I'm Badge and Skills Lead for the non-profit Mozilla Foundation. And the reason why you might be thinking, hang on, that's not really Doug Belshaw, that's some crazy man with a beard, is because I don't usually sport such a large beard and long hair. But the reason I'm doing that is because I'm raising money for cancer research this year. I'm not cutting my hair or my beard at all during 2013. I didn't actually tell my wife that until I started doing it. So every day she says things to me like, you look homeless. And that kind of thing, which is all good fun. So today I'm going to be talking about open badges. If you have a digital device in front of you, do feel free to kind of follow along. I haven't been as organized as Grania and put all my slides online in advance, but I will put this online. It might not have the animated GIFs live, it might have them static, but you'll be able to get all the links afterwards. So you might have seen this as being the Open Badges logo. That was our logo until version 1.0 last month. And when I first came across Open Badges, I was like, what are these? Are these crazy things here? This seems like something very new. And the claims that were being made about what could be done with Open Badges seemed fairly jaw-dropping to me. So I thought, well, there's lots of things which come along in education, especially in educational technology. There's a whole marketplace for this. So there's been all these kind of new tools and ideas and approaches, and I've seen them come and go. But there's something about some of them which really do miss the mark. Some of them really don't, they fail on entry. But some of them, there is something about some of them which there's something at the core of really good ideas and approaches. And after a while, after you've spent kind of a while online, you realize what those really successful ones are. You kind of can spot them as they come onto your radar. And Open Badges seem to be something which was going to work well. Although I've never really considered this in any detail, it's kind of a gut feeling that I have when you've spent your entire adult life living and working on the web. It's kind of something that you just get a gut feeling for, which ones are going to be successful and which ones are going to be failed. You're not always right, but you do get that feeling after a while. So if I had to put that gut feeling into words, then I think it would be something like this. First of all, the product, service, or idea, it usually has a name that you're not embarrassed to say in public. Like those ones which have like a million Z's in and, you know, like alliteration and miss-offs, whatever. The ones that you wouldn't be able to say to your grandma, they're the ones that aren't usually successful unless they have huge amounts of funding or very famous people behind them. The second thing is it usually meets a specific need. You don't usually get things which are long-term successful just because they're frivolous. You usually get something which meets a specific need. And thirdly, I would suggest that usually things which are successful, then they chime with the zeitgeist. Zeitgeist being a German word for like the popular stuff happening now, the feeling of the moment, that kind of thing. So the things which chime with the zeitgeist at some level. So when I came across open badges, that was my feeling. I felt like this was something worth investigating. So I was intrigued and I thought, well, let's do something about this. I'd recently left my position as a senior leader in an academy. That's a whole other story over tonight, over some beers. Like my experience at that academy, seriously. But I'd been teaching history and ICT for 7 years. I was director of e-learning of a 3,500 student academy across 9 sites, which was insane. And I just joined JISC, and I was new to higher education, so I was like, just kind of getting my bearings and, you know, putting my head above the parapet. But I felt like, at some level, I need to think more deeply about these badges and how they could be used in the formal education experiences that I had some kind of experience of. And I think, sorry, let's just go back there. So I think the reason why open badges are important to me is because they change what we can do in the ways in which we credential learning. And if you think about it like backwards, if we change the way that we credential learning, then that means we can change the way in which we assess learning. And if we change the way that we can assess learning, then that means we can kind of change the actual learning experiences that go on. Because for better or for worse, assessments drive a lot of what happens in formal education. So if we can change the whole value chain, if we can change like the end point of that, then we can change the start of that value chain as well. So I think that's something worth exploring. So I did. And that seemed like a really good thing for me to spend some time looking at. So I did. While I was at JISC, I was looking at open badges. But there wasn't a lot of information out there. We weren't at, you know, version 1.0 of badges then. So you had to look all over the internet trying to find like little pockets of information, people who were doing stuff with badges, pilot programs, all that kind of stuff. So I set up a semester of learning. And this was a phrase that I stole from a presentation at the Thinking Digital conference in 2010 from someone from Ogilvy, the advertising people. They have semesters of learning where they focus, they get some people who are interested and they focus on a specific thing for a semester. Now, they're not an academic institution. They spend a semester, a few weeks looking at a specific topic. So I set up a semester of learning, and lots of people, some people in this room actually, kind of got involved in that semester of learning, trying to find out more about badges. And it really opened my eyes to the types of things you could do with badges, both inside and outside formal education contexts. I didn't really know very much about learning and training and stuff outside of formal education. You know, I've spent 27 years as a student inside formal education. I spent my whole career up to the age of, 30. Inside formal education context. So I wasn't really aware of all the stuff that I see Donald at the back, him doing, and all the other kind of stuff that was happening there. I didn't really understand it, and it really did open my eyes. So fast forward to mid-2012, and Mozilla offered me a job, which was very nice, which I accepted. You don't say no when Mozilla come calling. And so I was quite excited about that. So now I've joined a team of people who fight the good fight for kind of freedom and openness on the web. And I evangelize open badges to groups of people like yourselves. And I also lead on Mozilla's web literacy work. And I'll talk more about that later, which I'm sure you're very excited about. So that's the end of my introduction. Each stage of my presentation gets shorter as we go on, by the way. So that's the long introduction, okay? And you might be sitting there going, well, Doug, that's all very well, but really, what are you talking about when we're talking about badges? Like, what is this thing you're talking about? I don't really know what an open badge is. And why are they so special? Why should I even be reverent about them? Why is this something worth paying attention to? Well, there's a guy called Kyle Bowen, who I first came across when I was doing some mobile learning work for JISC. And he's a fantastic guy. And I didn't realize until recently, he actually, in a former life, used to be an illustrator, which means that his slide decks are always amazing. They look fantastic. So I blatantly nicked this from his slide deck under a CC license. Now, he's done this anatomy of what a badge is, and I think this shows it really nicely. A badge is basically a digital image which has metadata inside it. And so it has things like the name of the badge, the description of it, the criteria, what you have to do to get the badge, who it was issued to, all those kinds of things. It has those inside the badge itself. Now, metadata, which is the most confusing word I'll probably say today, is data about data. So in the same way that when you open a book, remember physical books, when you open those books, when you look at the back of those books in the index, that is data about the data in the book. So that's kind of metadata about the stuff in the book. And so the metadata is actually in the badge itself. So the badge has information inside of it. It's not just something you can right-click and steal and pretend it's yours. So the badge has metadata baked inside it, and one way of thinking about it is like when you bake a cake. You have all the ingredients laid out, and when you put them inside the cake, you can't then get them back out of the cake. You can't say, oh, I'm just going to get some eggs out of my chocolate cake. They're baked into it in a way that you can't get them out. So once a badge has been earned, it's individual to the person who's earned it. So if I try and put a badge in someone else's badge, like if I try to get Steve's badge, I think you awarded a social media ninja badge recently. So if I try to steal Steve's badge, it just wouldn't have it. You know, if I try to put in my badge backpack, it will reject it and just say, like, I'm not into this. This is just not going to happen at all. Thank you very much. So that's how kind of badges work in a very, very 30,000-foot view. I can go into more detail about that if you want. But the thing which interests me, I did my first degree in philosophy, is that in my experience, people think through metaphors and tools. They think through kind of the metaphors which they've been brought up with, their experiences, that kind of thing. But they also think through tools. And we often think that tools are value neutral, or I've heard lots of people say, well, it's just a tool. Things, especially when they're digital, especially when they're online and things, they're not just tools, they're not value neutral. They actually have the intentions of the person who made the tool baked into them, in the same way that metadata is baked into the badge. So they constrain and influence what you do. Like the National Rifle Association of America say that guns don't kill people, people do. But as Eddie Izzard says, the gun helps, yeah? Like, you couldn't just stand there going, boom, bang, bang, boom, and, like, kill people. Like, the gun has a certain affordance built into it which kills people if you shoot it at them, yeah? In the same way, the tools that we use, Facebook, whatever it is, have things which are built into the way that you use them, which means that you're either constrained or liberated, depending on the design. So metaphors and similes also constrain the way that we think about stuff. I had to get HypnoCat in there somewhere because it is the most trippy animated GIF I've ever come across. So when something comes along like open badges, people try and understand it through the existing lenses and the existing metaphors that they've got. And they try to make sense of it with reference to existing tools and metaphors. So I find that problematic because it means that sometimes people don't get the value of things or don't get the inherent affordances of it. And it does take some kind of further thinking about these things. So we might see a distorted picture. When we see something like the Open Badges infrastructure, the OBI, they might see a distorted picture of it, and they might think, well, we've built up this entire tower, and someone's coming along and just going to go boom and knock the whole stack down. And that's not really what Open Badges are about. They're much more about a holistic picture, like augmenting the experience of the learner, like Joyce was trying to get about before. And at the end of the day, like, the OBI is a way of exchanging metadata-infused credentials with somebody else. How you learn them is very much up to your learning design, like Grania was talking about before. Can you design a bad badge? Can you design one which has really bad pedagogy, like at the back end of it? Absolutely, of course you can. Can you design ones which are really valuable, ones which are going to augment learners' experience, ones which are going to provide value when they go for jobs and that kind of thing? Yeah, absolutely. So it is literally like an ecosystem which is going to have good and bad elements. But I think that's what makes badges like powerful and revolutionary. They don't need to replace degrees or whatever we've got. They can kind of augment this experience. So I've spent 27 years in formal education. I realise the screen's quite trippy at the moment. I've spent 27 years, ever since being like 4 years old till I was 31. I spent time studying in different contexts and stuff, but inside formal education. I would like to think that me, age 32, there's more to me than just my LinkedIn job history and, my academic certificates. I'd like to think there's more to me than that. But how do you find out more to me than that? You have to do a lot of digging and searching. You have to look through my blog and everything, all the different spaces online. Whereas badges provide a place in which you can say to other people, these are the things which represent me as a person. If you click through, you can see my experience of that. You can see the evidence of that. You can see what other people think about me, rather than me just blagging my way through life, as obviously I don't do. So the reason why I think open badges are really exciting, the reason why it is the equivalent to me of kind of Cookie Monster coming across a whole plate of cookies, is because it means that we can do things that we've always promised to do. All those things as educators that we've hand-waved towards, like, oh yeah, like lifelong learning, we do that, obviously. And yeah, like personalized learning, we've never been able to grasp hold of that, have we? We've never really been able to do that properly. So instead of people kind of saying, oh, I can't do this because it's too hard, we can actually have a way in which we've got a platform for credentialing all of those things which we know are valuable, but we have no way of indicating to other people in a universal and trusted way. One thing that I think is really valuable, my experience of the classroom tells me this, is stealth assessment. Now, has anyone come across stealth assessment before while I have a sneaky drink? Stealth assessment is when the learner doesn't know that they're learning. So last year, Helen Keegan was here, and she was talking about an ARG, like Gronny referred to before. An ARG is an alternate reality game. The learners thought that there was this kind of a bit weird person who was kind of like tracking them and providing them with challenges, but actually it was all set up by Helen, and she was, behind the scenes pulling the strings like the puppet master. So at the end of it, they kind of leveled up and did all this work they wouldn't have done previously. They were kind of having this kind of stealth assessment. They're having this kind of this learning design, this hidden learning design. Now that is very hard to do offline because it involves deception of the learner. It involves lots of kind of tricky ethical issues, all the kinds of stuff which Helen is awesome at addressing. But in a digital environment, you can do this a lot easier. So, for example, in a badge-based environment, I can remember when the proclamation will come from on high, we need to do something new with the curriculum this year. Now, did I, as a teacher, go, oh, right then, well, I'll just rip up my curriculum, my scheme of work that I've just been doing for the last 5 years, and I'll completely start again, and I'll not have a summer holiday, I'll just rewrite the entire thing? Or did I put a new column on my scheme of work and put a tick box as to where it met those new things which are coming out of on high? Well, of course, I did the latter thing. And the reason why that's something which teachers do is because they're short of time, because some of these things they have to do are ridiculous, but some of the things are worthwhile. For example, citizenship education. Citizenship education is something which has been taught as a discrete subject, but also has been taught across the curriculum. And to my mind, as a former history teacher, should be taught across the curriculum. But how do you do that in a meaningful way so that learners can level up to some kind of citizenship understanding? Well, if you actually had it as a badge-based system in whatever context that you've got, they could earn kind of different parts of it and then level up to kind of a citizenship level badge. And they might not even realize they're doing it. They might all, at some time, through like game mechanics, like unlock the citizenship level badge that they didn't even realize they were going for. Yeah, you can do that in online environments. The other thing we can do is we can do things we haven't even really thought of doing yet. It's an ecosystem for innovation. It's an ecosystem in which you can build things, either commercial things or you can build free and open source things. And you can build things in formal education and informal education. I don't know what people are going to build with badges, but I'm sure some of it's going to be useless, and I'm fairly sure some of it's going to be awesome, right? Because that's the spectrum when you build something which is an open ecosystem. So an open badge, like I said before, is an image and it's some text mushed together. Now, someone very unkindly said that I actually look like a badger this morning because of my little white bits. So I'm a badger talking about badgers. But I'm going to ignore their comment. I know. And the badges are issued from one organisation or an individual to another. So there's some stuff which is essential to having a badge. Like, you can't create a badge if you don't have this information. That's information like who issued the badge, who is issued to, a description of what the badge has got in it, and the criteria URL. So this is something which is hosted on your website and tells you what the learner had to do to get that badge. But then there's some optional stuff as well, and this is a growing list of stuff which you can include if you want. So things like the evidence URL. Now, because that's a URL, that can point to anywhere on the web. So it can point to YouTube, it can point to social media sites, it can point to anywhere. Where have you got evidence of you doing stuff which, got you this badge? You can also have badges that expire. So badges that last a day or an hour or a year or whatever. So I can remember having to do and redo my lifeguarding qualification like every 3 years. Well, if that was a badge, then it would automatically expire. It would still show my profile, but it would show that I needed to renew it, that kind of thing. And you can also include information about issuers, like the information about like Plymouth University or whoever it was who issued the badge. You can include extra stuff in there as well. So we're adding new metadata fields like pie badges. So in Trivial Pursuit, when you have all the different, I call them cheeses, don't know about you, like cheeses that you add into the pie. They call them pie badges in the US. So we're going to add that pie element to it. So these 4 badges level up to a bigger badge, that kind of thing. So that was my rather wordy points 1 and 2. Thirdly, how are badges being used, Adam? Here we are. Right. How are badges being... Oh, actually, no, you're doing section 40. How are badges being used? Let's have some examples, because it's all very well me talking about how wonderful they are. And then I'll talk about what's next for badges as well. And I'm going to have to go quite quickly through this, I think, if we're going to have time for questions. So 74,000 badges. We've literally only just arrived at version 1.0 of the Open Badges infrastructure. We've got 74,000 badges issued so far to 25,000 earners by over 600 issuers. Now, we don't track people at Mozilla, so people can use badges however they want. And it's up to them how they choose to use the OBI. They can get the full fire hose, or they can just lap from the tap, as it were. But a good number of issuers have chosen to actually join the community. So joining the weekly community calls, which are every Wednesday at 5 o'clock our time. And also there's a Google group, there's a discussion list where people can talk either about the developer side of things or the pedagogical side of things. If that's something you're interested in, very friendly bunch of people from all around the world. So sharing information. Now I'm going to show you a lot of websites in a very short amount of time. And you don't need to hold your iPad up and take pictures of these, because I will actually put these online. It's going to be too quick. So you can find a list of some of these issuers on the Mozilla Wiki. These are ones which are added by the people themselves. So there's quite a long list, but it's not everybody who issues badges. I'm just going to go through some of these. The Open University have got a platform called CloudWorks. They've started using that as an issuing platform for different kinds of badges. They had a MOOC called Old MOOC, which is all about learning design, as Gronny knows. And they've got all different kinds of badges for all different kinds of things, which you can earn and display and all that kind of stuff. Last week I was talking to OpenLearn and the new FutureLearn, which is going to be kind of a for-profit MOOC for all different universities, about using open badges in their offerings, which is going to be quite exciting. I used to work for JISC infoNet, the JISC regional support centres, which some of you might be aware of. The JISC RSC Northern are starting to use badges for their events and encouraging people to use them within their FE and HE context. So they've got something next month, I think, actually, about that. Grania Hamilton at JISC RSC Scotland has been fantastic on using badges. In fact, I'm going to be going up for a design day later this month, spending an entire day getting people to think through how to use badges, a whole workshop. I'm running a workshop tomorrow. It's only an hour, but I am running a workshop tomorrow if you're interested in thinking through these things. Now, if anyone's worked in formal education, you'll know that there's real problems around transition. So kind of credentialing and understanding what learners have done before they arrive at your institution. Because especially like the primary to secondary context, they look up to secondary school and they look like they're about that tall. But in primary school, they look like they were that tall. Yeah, and something's happened in between over the summer and they've lost a lot of learning and we don't kind of value their skills. And something which Digital Me are doing in association with the SSAT, the Special Schools and Academies Trust, is that they're doing something around student digital leaders. So some of the people involved in this as well. And so what they're doing is they're getting kids who train other kids and other teachers as well. And those kind of skills and values are lost often on transition. So what they're doing is they're credentialing that through open badges and not just imposing those badges on the learners, but getting the learners to co-design the badges so they're things which are worth earning, if you see what I mean. And they had a badge design day in the Mozilla London office recently. Digital Me are actually one of the winners of the DML competition from last year, where the MacArthur Foundation in the US seed funded a lot of work around this. Now, when I say like they put a couple of $1 million into this, that sounds like a lot of money. But I used to work for JISC, and JISC puts millions and millions of pounds into programs every year around OER and everything like that. So yes, these people did get like a couple of £100,000 or whatever, but they're doing some fantastic work around getting, for example, kids who love sport and showing them how to get journalism skills and all that kind of thing, so that they can actually use their love of sport for something which potentially might get them employment or get them to level up. So they've got open badges for that, and they've got a lovely ecosystem. They're one of the best examples from that DML competition. So this is the DML competition website, just dmlcompetition.net. You can check them all out. There were competitions for lifelong learning, mastery, research, and kind of research and badge development stuff. And some people from the UK were winners of that competition, are doing the research right now. But this one here, if I just step away from the UK context, it might surprise you to know that Microsoft are one of the people who are using open badges for their Partners in Learning program. And they're aligned with the UNESCO ICT CFT Technology Literacy strand. And if you go through that whole program and get your open badge, it culminates in a Microsoft Certified Educator certification or whatever. So that's another example. I was over in Holland and Belgium recently. Kentech, who do some stuff around vocational learning, they've got a really interesting thing where they're using serious games alongside open badges to allow people who are in vocational education to level up and show what they've done in their learning. We're still talking to LinkedIn about using open badges, but one of a similar type of site who have adopted open badges is workforce.io. On that website, you can see people's badges alongside their kind of academic transcripts and everything like that as well. The Providence After School Alliance in the US have been the first people to get badges accepted as school credit. They have a different education system over there, obviously, so they have this idea of credit in schooling. But they had this after-school program, which is all just a nice value-added kind of thing. But actually, their programs through badges have now count towards school credit, which is a huge win for them, and something which I see expanding over there. The YMCA in New York, they've got this thing around strong kids. It's about kind of reducing the obesity epidemic, emotional resilience, that kind of thing. And they're using open badges for that. One that I absolutely love is the Sweetwater Foundation. I didn't have any idea about aquaponics until last year. It's basically where you use fish and like fish poo, and the poo goes into the soil and the plants grow, and then you feed the fish, and then it's all like a virtuous circle. But obviously, where do you learn to do that? Well, it's like an apprenticeship model. So they're using badges for that. Like, how do you set these things up? How do you set up your own business? How do you go about learning this stuff? How do you teach other people? And they're regenerating neighborhoods in like Detroit and stuff based on this. The most lickable website I've ever seen is BuzzMath. It's just beautiful. So I know these guys, they're from Canada. They're one of the winners of the competition as well. They're using it there's something called the Common Core in the US, which is a standards-based approach to maths and English and other subjects. And so BuzzMath, that aligns with the Common Core in the US, and they're using badges for that. Carnegie Mellon University are using them for robotics. NASA use them for their Starlight Explorer program, so you can go and find out more about the Mars rover expedition, and you can earn badges for that. There's an organization called ProExam, which are using them to, like professional credentials, using badges for that, because they've got metadata in. Veterans, when they come back from war, often find it very difficult to find jobs and have transferable skills, so they're using there's a special program for veterans, using badges to basically package up their skills in a way which employers understand. We at Mozilla are doing things for everybody on the web. So we're eating our own dog food, as it were, and we've got a web maker program where you can earn badges for your HTML and CSS skills. You want to level up in that. If you've never come across Peer-to-Peer University, go and have a look at that. Peer-to-Peer, it's p2pu.org. They've just launched their badges platform, so anyone can issue badges, anyone can set up a course, anyone can do this kind of thing. The value of a badge, because I can preempt certain questions today, like the value of a badge doesn't come necessarily in the reputation of the issuer. The value of the badge comes in the rigor of the criteria that you're using for the badge. Now, there are some stuff coming next which are going to add even more value to that, but let me just say that, first of all, everyone has to start somewhere, but the criteria URL, what you have to do to get that badge, the rigor of that, the thing that you can actually see by clicking on it, that's what constitutes the rigor of the badge. So I'm now going to go on to Adam's point. What's next for open badges? Well, we reached version 1.0 of the Open Badges infrastructure last month, which was a huge effort by the team. I just kind of sit over here in the UK kind of going, oh, well done everybody over there, because they're doing all the technical infrastructure and stuff. And you wouldn't believe how hard it is. Like, it's the same complexity as like Firefox and everything like that. And we're committed to Open Badges in the same level as we're committed to Firefox. So it's a huge achievement to get to version 1.0. And we launched that new logo for Open Badges, which you may or may not have seen before. And we launched a new website. So we've recently hired a number of people from the Obama 2012 campaign, including Erica Sakin, who's now our new Director of Communications. And she looked at our previous Open Badges website and went, oh, it's kind of cute. But I think we need to change all of the language on it, actually. So if you were in Steve Bunce's session yesterday, you saw that he was talking about, he showed a bit of it where it said that you can knit your skills together. And Steve being Steve, I don't know where he is, he loves knitting. So that obviously applies to him. And using homely metaphors is a nice thing to do. So that's great. And it's wonderful that we've got this really tasty ecosystem, which now works wonderfully. But we're still working on this as a platform for innovation. So I've said that we're committed to this in the same way that we're committed to Firefox and Firefox OS, which is our mobile ecosystem, mobile operating system, which will be launching on O2 in 2014. But like, what else are we going to do? What else can we do which is going to kind of put the cat amongst the pigeons? That's Fruit Ninja, which if you've never played, you should totally get. It's the most insane game ever. But yeah, cats for the win. We're really going to kind of put the cat amongst the pigeons by the end of the year. We're going to start federating backpacks. And what that means is in the same way that when I send an email to, I'm going to pick on Gronian again, I'm going to pick on Miles. Miles, when I send an email to you, does the email go directly from my computer to your computer?
Not directly.
No, it does not. It goes all around the web. And the reason for that is because all the different servers understand how to pass the message on. In the same way, we're going to have federation of backpacks, which means, oh, your university just merged with another one. Oh, your organisation has just shut down. I can take my badges, because the learner's always in control of them, and I'm going to put them somewhere else. So the federation of backpacks means you can host your badges anywhere you want. Second thing, and I'm going to rush through this bit, endorsement. So I talked before about the value of a badge comes primarily through the rigour of the criteria in that badge. Well, what about someone else coming along and saying, I really like what you've done there. I'm going to endorse that. Well, we're going to bake that into the Open Badges infrastructure, so a university could endorse the badges of a non-profit or whatever it wants to be. Like, anyone can endorse the badges of someone else, as long as that other person who created the badge agrees. So that's something which we've been asked for. Copper compliance. If you don't know what copper is, basically in the US, it's this really painful system that we in the UK kind of just shake our heads at and go, what are you doing? We've got the Data Protection Act, which protects us from, cradle to grave. Copper compliance is the thing which people want most of, yeah? And you see on this next slide, this is the bit where I was supposed to put an extra image, and I forgot. So we're going to be doing something with the Chicago Summer of Learning. The entire city of Chicago is going to be, over the summer where you have different programs happening with museums and after-school clubs and everything like that. They are all going to be badged. So the mayor's office is sponsoring this thing. So the whole of the city of Chicago is going to have badges so students can level up in different places and get bigger badges. And so we've got a solution for that. So students or young people can earn badges. They would stay in their badge backpack. They can't share them anywhere else. And therefore, it's copper compliant. So that's a big win. Of course, in the UK and the EU, we have different laws. And if you did actually take the Open Badges infrastructure and install it on your own server, you'd bypass all that anyway. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is my other part of my work is creating a new open learning standard for web literacy. We're going to launch this as a draft version on April the 26th. And then we'll have version 1.0 at the Mozilla Festival in October in London, which you're all very welcome to at the end of the year. And some people have done some work on web literacy, but it's all in silos and they just don't get it. Like, it doesn't join up together. But the way we're going to do things, we're going to have open badges which map onto all the different parts of the web literacy standard. So I know I've said this about digital literacy, you shouldn't do this, like having one definition to rule them all, but we are going to try and have one standard to rule them all for web literacy because you can bound it a bit more easily. You want to find out more about that? mzl.la/weblitstd. not like sexually transmitted diseases, though, obviously. And badge validation. My boss, Aaron Knight, has written an awesome badge validation paper, which will pretty much blow your mind in some of the things that you can do with badges. So, in conclusion, open badges are metadata-infused credentials. We're now at version 1.0 of the OBI. Lots of organizations are already using badges. Learning design is important, isn't it, Grania? New functionality is coming soon. You can get started right now. There's lots of things you can use to do that. There's a third-party issuer, openbadges.me, badge.us. There's ones for Drupal and Moodle and WordPress and all that kind of stuff. Go and check out the website, which has been relaunched recently. Find out more about that kind of stuff. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Grania, as well.